Corvette to a Porsche event. Not just any Porsche event, Porsche Club of America's open house. Welcome to Twin Cam. Eric with you today. Jan's just at a camera shot somewhere back there, but we find ourselves in a really cool location this morning. We are at the Porsche Club of America garage at the Porsche Club of America headquarters in Columbia, Maryland. Yes, that's right, if you never thought about it. Porsche Club of America, their headquarters are right here in Columbia, Maryland, and I am with PCA's Executive Director, Nguyen. Thanks for being with us, bro.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
Absolute pleasure. We came to your open house a couple of weeks ago, and it was a great demonstration, as our viewers will see, because there'll be a lot of clips inserted here of how much people care about this brand, how much they love driving their cars, and how much they like getting together to talk about it, pretty much.
Absolutely. I'm pretty fortunate to represent not only a wonderful mark, but also represent a club. We're the single largest car club in the world. If you
And a lot of folks don't even think about that. They might be thinking, oh, there's some Mopar thing or whatever, but it's actually Porsche.
It is. We're very fortunate to have about 120,000 members.
Wow. And they are geographically disparate, no?
Right, primarily US and Canada.
U.S. and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I heard tell, was there not a chapter, at least at one time, of PCA in Germany even?
There was a PCA region in Germany, but unfortunately due to insurance reasons and such, we had to disband that group.
And of course, it's Porsche Club of America. We just say PCA is the acronym for short. Let's talk a little bit about the origins of the club. Now, I think on the 60th anniversary, which was a couple of years ago, I was in discussions with Auto Week magazine about doing a piece on the history. It never came together, but I did some research on it. And the club actually got started here in Washington, D.C., nearby at a restaurant, which I believe was called Blackie's.
Blackie's House of Beef in D.C.
And you can fill me in, but one of the funny things, and this was part of my pitch, is that I think something like 11 or 12 guys showed up for the first meeting, one of whom had a Volkswagen, and he was asked to leave.
Yeah. We don't talk about how we ask people to leave because we really are an inclusive club of enthusiasts. But in the early days when they got started, our founder, Bill Scholar, had a call to action for those that had a 356. If you wanted to come together at Blackie's House of Beef, 13 people did show up. Unfortunately, one of the 13 did not have a Porsche, so they were asked to leave.
We should, however, quickly point out, though, that I think you can still get PCA membership now as a Quest member or something like that. It has been that way in the past. So you don't actually physically have to have a Porsche.
Right. So to be an official member, yes, you have to own a Porsche. But as an enthusiast, we have a quote-unquote membership program to help you find your Porsche, your dream. Okay. So it's we call it test drive, and so the test drive program allows you to have access to our resources, cars, Porsche experts. You'll be able to find.
And actually, we'll get back to the history in a minute. If you're thinking about buying a Porsche, it's probably not a bad way to go because there's considerable expertise here and folks who might at least be able to give you some guidelines and markers and tips.
And there's a lot of Porsches out there for sale. So if someone's an enthusiast, PCA wants that person to end up in the right car. Because there are a lot of cars out there, with the recent, natural disasters that's happened down south, you're probably going to see some flood cars.
No doubt.
We have information, we can show people, how to look for a good car. Because the last thing you want is someone that has dreamt about having a Porsche since they were 4, finally have the means to do so, and then they get into the wrong Porsche and their dreams are just shattered.
Yeah, you want that experience to be as good as possible and consistent as possible, whether people are club members or not.
Absolutely. We get calls all day long, and someone will just call and say, oh, I'm on my mission to buy my first Porsche, and I'm happy to talk with them, and hopefully, in the 5 or 10 minutes, at least give them a flavor of, test drive a lot of cars, be armed with information of the specific model that you want, and please don't buy the very first car you drive, because it will be a wonderful drive. Don't get me wrong, the first Porsche you drive will be wonderful, but a smart buyer is try a couple of them out, because then you'll see some differences. And if that first car truly is the one for you, then by all means go back to it, but don't buy the first one.
Yeah, feel better about it because you drove some others before
Absolutely.
you bought that first one. However, let's get back to the 1950s and important stuff. Mr. Scholar, we left him at Blankie's.
So Mr. Scholar, unlike today where you have over 250 dealerships in the US, back then Porsches were sold through multi-mark dealers. So there wasn't a support network, there wasn't a dealer network. And a lot of these people that bought their 356s bought it while they were overseas in the military, bought it when they were on travel. So when it came to, Porsches are also very DIY-able, if that's an okay word to use.
Yeah.
So back then he wanted to bring together people to help each other out. They didn't have internet forums, they didn't have mailing lists or newsletters for Porsches. So he thought he would bring these people together, and they were known as the Gripe Group.
They called it the Gripe Group. In the mid-1950s, you've also got to remember that, foreign cars still not quite a thing. Yes, you had returning servicemen from the war bringing cars back and others, and they were sold at these multi-mark dealers, particularly later. I think it was Porsche, Audi, VW type of arrangement often.
Yep.
So, you had people who were like, well, you've got one too, and you're kind of almost as weird as I am because you got this little German car. So there was that motivation for association as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure back in the day, in the 50s and early 60s, you were seeing a lot of American muscle cars kind of coming about. And so for Porsche to come into the scene, or to be an owner where you have this little itty bitty car as opposed to a muscle car, and you have an engine in the back as opposed to a big block up front, you had to find somebody that could appreciate what you had, and it probably wasn't plentiful back then.
Yeah, and not to be stereotypical, but you're talking about your tweed wearing college professor with a pipe and what have you out there. So these guys got together at this restaurant, and you'll see a couple of photos that will kind of sub in of that. And from there, the club kind of grew, I guess, organically.
Yeah, it did. The word spread. PCA from the very beginning started to do a lot of different events to get people out there and drive, and not only tour with their cars, but to work on them at tech sessions, to have a Concord display, clean them with Q-tips, and we have a rule book for pretty much how we do everything in PCA, and it started back in the 50s, and we're very methodical, and I think that's set a very good base for the club, and we've been able to grow on that base and still maintain sort of how we have fun in PCA, and it's very orderly. It's a very level playing field, and there's also a lot to be offered in the club.
And as for its expansion, it's kind of interesting with the Porsche Club of America being, at least at its inception, an East Coast phenomenon, now of course all over the country and up to Canada as well. But for people who think about Porsche, the center of gravity for a long time and traditionally has been sort of the West Coast in California. And you remember years ago, Porsche's headquarters were actually in Reno, Nevada.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that there was that duality. Now, of course, the Reno location for Porsche headquarters was maybe a little bit to do with logistics, but since Europe is on the other side of the country, it's really a lot more to do with tax when they did it back then.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that impacted the club's growth, or again, its membership patterns, or it's just a funny little irony.
Yeah, you can probably trace all the growth in the club to where the markets have been strong for Porsche over the years. I think if you talk to people today, most people will think, yes, West Coast is probably the largest concentration of Porsche owners. But ironically, that might be shaped by Hollywood, because the Northeast is actually the strongest concentration of Porsche owners. And and Porsche Club members, because I think it's because we started primarily over here. The cars came in overseas from here beginning.
Yep.
75% of the Porsches that were ever made are still on the road. So the accumulation of vehicles in the Northeast, predates a lot of West Coasters.
Which is again interesting, and that's accumulation by volume, because cars in the Northeast tend to rust away. They stay in a lot better shape.
Yeah, I
in a
mean,
dry climate
I think
out in
for
California.
your everyday cars, that's probably true. But everybody that brought Porsches or bought Porsches in the Northeast, they probably weren't sitting outside most of their life. They were in garages, well kept, and even if they were daily driven, they were probably maintained better than your average, Ford or Chevrolet at the time.
And again, one of the key points of the Porsche Club is, of course, community, and that's getting together face to face, but it's also, liaising remotely. So I imagine a newsletter developed relatively early on, and that became, I guess, Panorama today.
Panorama, exactly.
Which is the magazine of the club.
Yeah, Panorama continues to be the crown jewel of PCA. In this digital world, many would have probably bet money that Panorama would have gone away. But what we've seen is we're such a niche market, and people still love the tactile feel of getting a beautiful piece every month. It's the one thing that we can provide to our members as part of their $46 membership a year. That alone is worth it. And then you add on the other benefits of having events, having discounts at dealers or shops and areas. So, Panorama for us in terms of print isn't going anywhere.
Well, and Porsche has always been a premium brand. It just acquired that reputation in the US, and it stayed that way in Europe as well. Digital content, digital delivery of content is so ubiquitous now. Well, what's premium? Something physical that you can hold and that you can relax with, and you can sit in the garage like we are here. There's a Porsche Boxster sitting behind us. We'll see it in a minute. But I can envision myself, on Saturday morning sitting down with my coffee next to my car with my magazine.
Absolutely.
If you don't mind, Vu, tell our viewers what it's like to be a PCA member. Let's take a typical region in a typical month. You're a PCA member. You've got whatever you got. Could be a Cayenne, could be a Panamera, could be a Macan, could be a 911. How do you engage with the club? What's typically going on?
Sure. So here's what usually happens. Probably sometime early in life, a PCA member rode in, drove a Porsche, and the seed was planted. And then they did something in life so that at some point they can now afford either a used one or a new one, and they go out. And myself, I've proclaimed this in my family that I will have one by the time I'm 30, right? And so many of us in PCA, once we get to that level, we get the car, comes home, your family is excited for you, your friends are excited for you, but more than likely those of them don't have Porsches. They're excited for you,
Sure.
But then you keep on going. You're like, oh, I love my car, I had fun with this, and then eventually your family just gets tired of hearing about it all the time. They're like, enough already with you and your Porsche.
Yeah.
So where do you go? And that's where the club comes in, because you can come to the club and keep talking about your Porsche, and we'll keep wanting to listen. In fact, we'll ask you more questions about the car. And so I think a lot of Porsche owners come into the club to look for the people that are kind of cut from the same cloth, looking to go to events to enjoy their car more than just using it as traditional transportation. And the club offers that. The club offers you anything you want in terms of how you want to spend your extra time. You can simply do a cars and coffee and just hang out for a couple hours on the weekends, or if you want to go to a dinner, if you want to go to a tech session, if you want to learn how to take care of your cars, if you want to start maybe doing advanced driving, we offer that. If you want to go racing, we have sort of a career that you can try to map out for yourself to be a better driver. So, the PCA member is very fortunate because we are so large. We can offer all sorts of programs. Annually, we offer over 3,500 events in the US and Canada. 3,500 events. There's bound to be one or two that you'll be interested in doing.
Sure.
So, that's where you can buy other makes. There are other wonderful cars. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people think I'm just Porsche centric, and I'm not. I love all cars, from from muscle cars to imports to German cars. I love them all, but none of them, I can honestly say this, none of them offers a lifestyle and an opportunity listing that as deep as PCA can offer.
Well, let's talk about that lifestyle aspect of it. One of the bigger annual events is the Porsche Parade. If you would explain what that is, how people get involved with it. It's a bit of an odyssey.
Yeah, the Porsche Parade is basically a Porsche enthusiast bucket list item. So the first Porsche Parade was in 1956 in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And the whole concept of a Porsche Parade was to bring people together to celebrate the mark, to do competitive events as well as social events. And somewhere in the line, they did a parade of Porsches through the town. But now what it's grown into, a few dozen cars, a couple of days, has now grown into a week-long event. Typically, we'll bring in about, I would say, 1,000 to 1,200 families, about 800 to 900 cars. We go into locations where PCA will be basically taking over a town or a city. The reason being is we want that feel where when you come to a stoplight in the local town and you look left, there's a Porsche. You look right, you look ahead. It's really cool to just see.
There's a bit of an immersive feel.
Exactly.
There.
Like we could fit PCA or we could fit Parade into, say, Las Vegas, but we wouldn't want to do that because we would just get lost in the masses. And we want to make this event very special for our folks. And to give you a perfect example is French Lick, Indiana. We try to pick locations where people don't necessarily know that it's a fantastic venue. And so we scout these places out. We know that we can fit. We know that we can have all of our components of parade, from the autocross to the Concours to the TSD rallies, in these areas, and we bring them there, and we make them fans of these towns and cities.
Sure, and typically there may be some interesting driving roads around the area.
Absolutely.
And some other attractions too, because club membership is one thing where most of the folks have a significant other, and sometimes they're not quite as enthusiastic, so there are other things for them to do.
Yeah, Porsche Parade is really built for not just the enthusiast, not just for the primary member of PCA, but it's for the family, it's for the significant other. We offer everything from a kids program, of course, lots of dining, lots of, I think we even have beer, wine tastings at events. We have cooking classes. So we want to make sure that if people are investing in Parade and making it their annual family vacation, the whole family should have fun, not just the person that's the car person.
And I've often wondered about it because I attend a lot of racing events, writing about them and doing other business. There's usually a Porsche paddock at, say, an IMSA event, or often even at an IndyCar event, something like that. Does the club engage with those type of things, or are they more set up through the promoter and the racing organization?
We're very fortunate where we have a nice relationship with the manufacturer, and so that's typically our ticket into the event.
Interface, yeah.
And we work together with them to. So we have what's called the Porsche Plots, and that is actually assigned or built by the manufacturer, but the cooperation is they rent the space, they set up the tents and stuff like that, but in terms of the operation of the Porsche Plots, that's where the PCA volunteers come in.
And of course there are marquee events that the manufacturer itself does, probably none more so than Rennsport, which is once every, I think they're down to 2 years now, is it? Or is it still 4 years?
No, it's every 4 years.
It's every 4 years. Maybe there was one period where it was a 2-year break. But so every 4 years, Rennsport is a Porsche reunion. It's a very motorsports-centered event. And of course that is, let's be honest about it, the heart of the brand,
yes,
really,
absolutely. Even
though it is expanded beyond that. And I'm sure PCA is there and engages with that as well.
Yeah, in fact, we are going to a meeting tomorrow down in Atlanta with Porsche to understand our role as PCA, understand what their goals are going to be for the Rennsport Reunion 6, and the power of PCA is it's in its volunteers. We have people that are willing to do anything and everything to have an event go off.
And a little bit, if you would, about that relationship with the manufacturer. You know, you're the biggest car club around, just about. I would think Porsche takes you pretty seriously.
They do. To put it into perspective, if you take all of the Porsche Club members in the world, so Porsche Club of China, Porsche Club Great Britain, add them all together, you have about 220,000 Porsche Club members. So of the 220,000, PCA makes up 120,000. So a significant portion of the entire Porsche Club membership. No.
We're going to look around a little bit, including at what Vu is daily driving, or semi-daily driving, or close to daily driving.
Yeah.
Before we do that, tell our viewers, you know, if they're interested, how do they become a member? How do they talk to the club about becoming a member? What's the process?
It's very simple. www.pca.org. Click join now. All you need is a VIN if you want to join as a member. If you don't have a Porsche just yet, we have a program called Test Drive that you can also, as I said earlier, join to get resources so that we can help you get the right Porsche.
Excellent. Well, let's go take a look at a couple of them right now.
Absolutely.
That's a bit of all things Porsche at the Porsche Club of America. Our thanks to Executive Director Nguyen for being with us on Twin Cam. Till next time.